following program contains scenes of violence. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the FTW podcast. Good morning, everybody out there, especially to all the fans talking wrestling. My name is Emir Blackbane Costello, and this is the second episode of the FTW podcast. Thank you so much for joining me here on this 4th of July weekend. Hope everybody's having a blast out there. You know, the 4th of July weekend is always a ton of fun. I'm broadcasting live here from Long Beach, California, the home of Snoop Doggy Dogg, and of course, where I come from. Every time you hear a big boom going off in the sky, you got a question. Was that a gunshot, or was that a firework? I don't know. Should I hit the deck? Am I going to be all right? But all that aside, I definitely hope that everybody has a safe 4th of July weekend and enjoy some barbecue. I know I definitely plan to get my grub on. In Los Angeles, the special hot dog is the bacon wrapped hot dog. That's our thing down here. So I'm gonna be making some of those on the grill on the 4th of July and just trying to enjoy the day off, because I finally have a job that allows me to take holidays off. I used to work in retail, and in retail you have to work every freaking holiday. But now I'm enjoying myself. I got a nice little cushy little desk job. Allows me to be relaxed throughout the week, so I can come home and do nice things like the official FTW podcast. So anyways, I was sitting at home yesterday, and I just got off work, trying to take a load off, and I decided I'm going to play a little bit of the WWE 2K16, as I still do. I'm still playing that game. I don't know if you guys are, but it's still a while before 2K17 comes out. The commercials are just starting to air. It's not even rated yet, okay? And I can't wait. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and play some WWE 2K16. And I did my own little draft and everything and rearranged the shows and created new champions. And so where it was getting a little stale for me, now all of a sudden it's entertaining again, which is super cool, right? So I had a match yesterday. It just so happened that it was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Sami Zayn. And my son is sitting there on the bed watching me play. He's 6 years old. His name is Emir Jr. And he says, "Daddy, you're wrestling with Sami Zayn, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm wrestling with Sami Zayn." He's like, "Daddy, Sami Zayn is my favorite wrestler." And I'm like, "That's cool, bro. He's my favorite too. I love Sami Zayn, right?" He's like, "Yeah. Who's that other guy?" I just had to take a step back, and I'm like, that's Stone Cold, bro. You don't know Stone Cold? He is like, "No, I don't know who that is." And I thought to myself, it's happened. I never thought it would happen, but it's happened. I've gotten old. I've been watching wrestling since 1990. And I grew up on, oh my goodness, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Hulk Hogan, all those guys, right? And certainly when I was a little bit older, and by a little bit older, I mean middle school, something like that. I don't know. It was right around the time that Stone Cold finally got big, as Shawn Michaels did the favors and laid down for Stone Cold at WrestleMania, injured back and all. I was there, man. No, not at Mania, but I'm just saying I was alive, and I had my eyes glued to the TV set to watch Stone Cold's rise. And he's been such a huge impact in the business, obviously. I mean, he's on the cover of the damn game. So for my son to go, "Hey, who's that guy?" I'm like, wow, times really have changed. But one thing, he knows who The Rock is. Because the thing about The Rock is everywhere, right? And he knows John Cena. He knows Triple H. He just didn't seem to know Stone Cold. But you know what? It brings up an interesting point for me. And something that I definitely want to get discussed today is what it really means to be the face of the business, I mean, there are some people who reach a certain height in their career and they're the face of their respective company. And then there are certain wrestlers who, are the face of wrestling, period. Even for the people who don't watch wrestling. I'm not even just talking to casual fans. I'm talking about the guys who don't even watch it, they don't know anything about it, but they know who John Cena is, right? Or back in our day when we were kids growing up, people who didn't watch wrestling, who didn't care about it, but they knew who Hulk Hogan was. There's something to be said about guys who are the face of the company, the face of the industry. And if you think about it, going back, several decades, there hasn't been that many people that were the actual face, because the thing about being the face of the company is when they lock in on a guy, that guy gets a pretty long run. I mean, several years of just being the guy, right? So I figure when I was growing up, maybe Hulk Hogan was the face, right? Hulk Hogan was the biggest wrestler ever. Could he wrestle particularly well? Not so much in my opinion. But some kind of way his persona got over with the crowd, and there wasn't a person in the world who didn't know who Hulk Hogan was. And then sometime after him, I think, Bret Hart picked up the ball and ran with it for a while, and then it went to Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. I remember watching, all the girls in the crowd just wanted to jump the guardrail and jump on Shawn Michaels, and as Triple H says, his dance moves weren't even that good. They were terrible. He only has the one move. He kind of looks like a broke down male stripper. He looks like he's going to almost take off the vest, and his lips are all pursed, and it's hilarious looking. But all the women loved Shawn Michaels, right? And then after Shawn Michaels, the baton was passed to the Rattlesnake, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And there were some guys around him at the time, that could have been the face, like The Rock. He was very, very popular at the time. I wouldn't say The Rock was the face of WWE at the time. Clearly, that distinction belonged to Stone Cold Steve Austin. But he was there. Also, Triple H was there, and The Undertaker. These guys, they were popular, but they weren't the face. Stone Cold carried that baton for a long time. And when he was ready to pass it off, I think the baton was finally passed eventually to John Cena. Now, how do you know that John Cena is the face? Well, I know because I watched John Cena beat all my heroes. Guys I never thought he should beat. I remember when Triple H did the favors for John Cena at WrestleMania 22, I believe it was. Broke my heart, man, to watch, Triple H fighting against John Cena. Triple H had the crowd in the palm of his hand, man. It was so funny because he was the heel, and Cena was the babyface. But even back then, the fans could not stand John Cena. And by fans, I just mean, older males. Of course, women and children love him. And those are the people buying the merchandise, especially for the children. So this guy's on a rocket ship to stardom and all kinds of money, to the point to where Triple H, as I stated in the last podcast, the guy who publicly said, yeah, John Cena stinks. He sucks at wrestling. But at WrestleMania, I'll be damned if Triple H didn't lose that match to John Cena, okay? And I believe he was submitted in that match, which is even crazier. But that's what happens when you're the face of the company. He went on a run that nobody could believe. He beat everybody. I remember the time he hit the attitude adjustment on Bobby Lashley off like the second rope or something like that. I mean, he was beating guys in impossible ways. But the company believed in him, and they knew that if for no other reason, people were going to tune in each week to see what was going on with John Cena. And that's the power that you have when you're the face of the company. Everybody wants to see you. It doesn't matter. As long as you can evoke some sort of emotion out of the crowd, that's what counts, right? It doesn't matter if people like you. It doesn't matter if people hate you. What matters is who's going to get a better reaction out of the crowd than you, whether that's love or hate. It's all the same. Reaction is reaction, and it means you're doing something right, okay? So John Cena was the face of the company, and in retrospect, just looking at it, he kind of is still the face of the company, but the WWE Universe has made it abundantly clear that they're kind of tired of seeing his face, right? And in the words of Enzo Amore, John Cena's got, cup of hatish, he's got a cup of hatish, and then that is what it is. What it comes down to is John Cena's getting older. He can't keep going on and on and on like this. And so WWE is in panic mode, right? They've got to find a new face of the company. They got to find, the guy who's going to usher them into this new era, and it was gonna be, they want to put the company on the back, on the shoulders of this man for several years, right? Meanwhile, they're trying to bring up other talent and get them up to speed and raise their levels and everything like that, because that's what's good for the company. But they need the one guy who's going to take over for John Cena. And the company has decided that the guy that they're going with, now follow me here, the guy that they're going with, he's not a good guy. Now also, he's not a bad guy. He's just the guy. And of course, as you can hear from the theme that's being played, we all know that I'm talking about Roman Reigns, right? So here's the deal. You got Roman Reigns, who was a part of the Shield. One of the best three-man factions that's probably ever existed in WWE. I mean, they came in, they made a crazy impact. And even at one point they said, these guys are the future right here. These guys are going to be in the main event, They worked very well. They gelled together. And in fact, I'll probably do an entire episode just on the Shield coming up sometime in the future. But from that group, really emerged, first of all, I never really thought that Dean Ambrose would get to be WWE champion. I'm not surprised that Seth got it, and I'm not surprised that Roman eventually got it. But here's the focus. I thought it was interesting that of the three of those guys, Roman Reigns was handpicked, and it was like, this guy, this is our guy right here. He's going to be the next face of the company. And I heard different rumors, because he reminded them of a Big Daddy Cool Diesel, and, he's tall and he's athletic and he can do all these things. And they just thought, this is the one. All the women are going to love him because of his long hair and those dreamy blue eyes. The kids are going to love him. They're going to get behind him. And it's going to be fantastic because as John Cena is slowly being phased out. Because they're not... You think they're going to give John Cena another World Heavyweight Championship so he can tie or surpass Ric Flair? I don't think they're doing that. They love John Cena, of course, and he's done wonderful things for the company. But Ric Flair is Ric Flair, baby. Woo! So, they can't just... There's got to be some distinction there. Realistically, especially with his inability to actually wrestle a good match, you don't really want John Cena in the same neighborhood as Ric Flair, right? So anyways, they got Roman Reigns here, and he's supposed to be, the guy, which I think is one of the worst tags I've ever heard in my life. I'm not a bad guy. I'm not a good guy. I'm the guy. The guy. Like, how do you even expect somebody to succeed with something like that? It sounds terrible. There's nothing organic about it, okay? Stone Cold is a guy who comes out and he's like, I'm going to whip your ass, and that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. And The Rock comes out, know your role, and shut your mouth. Even Triple H comes out and he's like, I am the game, right? And Roman Reigns comes out and he's like, I'm the guy. You're who? The guy. You're the guy? No, I'm not the guy. I'm the guy. Not a good guy, not a bad guy. I'm the guy. The guy. Fans are not responding to that, right? Especially because they realize when Hulk Hogan rose to the top of the business, and Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, Stone Cold, The Rock, Triple H, all these guys, when they rose to the top of the business, even John Cena, it happened organically. Nobody's handpicking these guys out and saying, this guy's next. It just happened organically based on their work and their ability to connect with the crowd. But it wasn't that way with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns didn't have this great connection with the crowd, and so everybody knew, oh, this guy is naturally next. You know who was naturally next? Daniel Bryan was. Unfortunately, as we all know, he succumbed to injury, and he had to leave his wrestling career lying exactly where it started, which is in the middle of the ring. And it was unfortunate and it was sad. And it scared people. Seth Rollins was even quoted as saying, while he was out and injured, watching Daniel Bryan having to retire it, he cried for that. Because he loved Daniel Bryan and have a history and have a friendship, but also because it was one of those, wow, that could be me moments. What if that was me? What if I had to walk away from this for forever? But I haven't seen the crowd connect with anybody in years the way that they connected with Daniel Bryan. There's your face. That's the guy that the people got behind organically, not Roman Reigns. The people were told that Roman Reigns was their guy, and they rejected that idea because they're the WWE Universe. And they don't need to be told anything. They can think for themselves. You can't tell them who to like and what to do anymore. See, that changed. If you remember back in the day, that was confusing for Bret Hart. He couldn't understand, when he was wrestling Stone Cold Steve Austin, and when he had the program with Shawn Michaels. These guys were, they were heels back then, right? And he was a babyface. But all of a sudden, it became cool to be the bad guy. And he's an old school wrestler, so he couldn't understand, like, hey, what's going on here? We told you I'm the good guy, and we told you this guy's the bad guy. You're supposed to like the good guy. So what's going on here? How did we lose control? We lost control because the WWE Universe is a group of free-thinking individuals, and you can't tell them what to do, how to think, and what to feel. But your job, if you were back there producing that show, and you were writing and trying to make things happen on Raw and SmackDown and at these pay-per-views, your job is not to tell the WWE Universe what to think. Your job is to understand their thinking and then try to find a way to deliver to them what they want, right? That's not what's being done with Roman Reigns. Triple H is, all due respect to him, he's got a hard on for Reigns. And he's like, this is the guy right here. This is who I want to be at the top, and I'm going to push him to death. I don't care how many boos. I don't care how, there's been rumors that they've had to alter the audio because Roman Reigns is being booed so much, and that's just insane. But they're going to push him regardless. And so he was given the belt. He finally was, Triple H put him over at WrestleMania, gave him his WrestleMania moment, and it was amazing, right? And I'm sure Roman Reigns was very thankful for that. And they continue to push him, regardless of the fact that everybody hates it. And how does Roman Reigns pay them back? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not taking any kind of position of trying to judge this man. I'm just trying to make people understand what's happened here. Roman Reigns pegged as the new face of the WWE. He's supposed to usher the WWE into this new era, And he was literally handpicked, and he was handed the title. Not to say that he wasn't out there wrestling everybody else and working for it, but he didn't earn the respect of the fans. He didn't earn the love and the connection with the fans. He was just told, regardless of how they feel, you're going to be champion. And how does he repay the WWE and Triple H for making those types of decisions? Well, he gets caught violating the wellness policy. Now, I don't know how you felt about this, or if you saw this coming, potentially, but I'm going to be honest, I was completely caught off guard by this. I'm shocked, I'm surprised, and quite frankly, I'm disappointed, young man. But you know what, I think more than just my opinion counts here. I mean, maybe there's something to be said. Maybe other people saw this coming, I don't know. So, coming up after the break, I'm going to bring my first guest ever onto the FTW podcast and give this man a chance to discuss his thoughts on Roman Reigns and the WWE and this whole situation, because I think he has a very, very interesting theory that everybody is going to want to hear. Thank you so much for riding with me so far, and I'll see you on the other side of the break.
This is a war, and our blood will draw the battle lines. We will stand, we will fight. Whose side are you fighting for? This is a war.
WWE Battleground, Sunday, July 24th. Welcome back to the FTW podcast, everybody. Fans talking wrestling, and that's what we are. I am a fan, just here to talk about some wrestling. And the topic that we were discussing here in this second episode of the FTW podcast was Roman Reigns, who's been set up as the new face of the company, obviously, who's been pushed beyond belief, in spite of the fact that he has no real connection with the fans, in spite of the fact that everybody boos him. But for some reason, right, Triple H and the powers that be, Vince McMahon, somebody back there is like, this is our guy. So he's been pushed to all hell. He's been given the title twice, and he's even gotten his WrestleMania moment. He's set records in the Royal Rumble. He's done all kinds of things. They've tried to give him this man all kind of records and accolades to show that he's the future. He's the present. He's not a good guy. He's not a bad guy. He's the guy. And as we discussed before we went into the break, how does Roman Reigns repay the WWE for standing so firmly behind him in the face of what I would call adversity? Well, he repays them by violating the wellness policy. Again, as I stated, I was very shocked by this. I really didn't see this coming. But that's probably because I'm used to the Boy Scout that is John Cena.
There we go.
You know, typically when you're the face of the company, you don't do things like this. But here we have Roman Reigns. And again, as I said, I don't just want to have my opinion here. So I've taken the liberty to bring in my buddy JJ, who's agreed to come on the show today and give us all his expert opinion. Because after talking to this guy, I realized he's got a lot of great things to say about the wrestling business, and his well of knowledge runs really deep. So JJ, how you doing this morning, buddy?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing
What's
pretty
up,
good.
y'all?
Just trying to enjoy this California weather, as I was saying at the beginning. You know, I don't know what's going on in New York where you're at, but here in California, the sun is out, it's shining, and it feels pretty good, man.
Oh man, it's raining down here. It's just terrible down here. Bring the sunshine over here. That's all I gotta say.
So
Man,
this Roman Reigns situation, we got this guy, Roman Reigns, that the company is trying to push and trying to make him the next face, as that's a very important thing for WWE. And in all that they've done for him, in spite of the fan reaction, all of a sudden this guy slips up and violates the WWE wellness policy.
oh my gosh. Well, let me tell you something about Roman Reigns' situation right now. Obviously, they're putting a lot of time into him, which that enough is a risk. But they're losing money on him, which is also not a good thing. That itself says, what's happening? Why are you still investing in this guy if you're losing money, especially on house shows? They didn't have that problem with John Cena. They didn't have that problem with CM Punk. They didn't have that problem with Seth Rollins even. But they're having that problem with Roman Reigns. But they still decided to push the guy. That's what gets me. They still said, Roman, we're still losing some stuff on you, but you know what? We're not going to pull the plug on you. No. We're not going to do that to you. So you know what? They decide to push him at WrestleMania against Triple H. He's no Batista, that's for sure. So fans didn't like the idea of Roman going over Triple H. They wanted Triple H to hold the title longer and wait till Seth Rollins comes back. So the Seth Rollins and Triple H rivalry that was originally supposed to happen would happen. So this whole situation with Roman Reigns obviously leaves the WWE with a bad taste in their mouth, obviously, from personnel, because they put all this effort and time and money and took a risk on this man just for him to get suspended.
Right, and
That's
see,
like...
it's not like it was before, right, JJ? See, back in the day, and I don't know what era you started watching wrestling, but I started in the 90s, okay? And this wasn't apparent to me as a kid, but obviously it's well documented now, and everybody is aware that Shawn Michaels, when he was the face of the company, he had beyond a drug problem. I mean, it was insane what they were putting up with back then. But this isn't the 1990s anymore, and there's a few differences. One, I don't know that they were testing guys back then, but obviously they test guys right now. And the second thing is, this company is now publicly traded, right? So they have investors. They can't afford for the face of the company to be found out to be using, PEDs or any other kind of drugs, because all of a sudden the people who are investing in the company stop investing.
Well, let me start about the Shawn Michaels thing. I actually started watching in that era, and that was actually, I may get a lot of heat for it, but I don't really care. That was actually not one of the best eras, even though Shawn Michaels is a great performer, Hall of Fame performer. That was not one of the best eras that WWE should be proud of, honestly, because it was a mess. Because Shawn Michaels, face of the company, not only did he face injury problems, he had drug problems as well. He had tons of it. And, to me, the whole Shawn Michaels issue should have been writing on the wall to not have one man be the face of a company. That should have been the writing on the wall right there. Because if you have one man and you're depending on one man, there's a good chance that one man can mess up because he's human or get injured or whatever else. But because Shawn Michaels is, part of that little circle, he had a lot of little breathing room with his issues. And that was true for guys like Razor Ramon, too, who had a lot of breathing room, and other guys who had a lot of breathing room with their drug issues back then. So, and in reality, they should have been, the roster should have been a heck of a lot smaller than what it was. That's just me. That is just me. Because, when I look at Roman Reigns, I say, why is one man carrying the company? Because God knows something can happen. And you're in trouble if Roman Reigns is not ready. You're in trouble, no matter what. Because you have men who you haven't been pushing, and now you're having to use them now, and you're not using them properly. You've been focusing on one guy. It's multitasking, man. You gotta push multiple people at the same time. That way you have a backup guy. That way, if you have a situation, then you have a backup plan. You need a backup plan always.
Right, and so to touch back on that Shawn Michaels thing, desperate times call for desperate measures. And when you're going through the Monday Night Wars and WCW is kicking your ass in the ratings, and the only thing that seems to be keeping you afloat is Shawn Michaels, you can't get rid of that guy. But again, it was a different time. Now, to answer your question about why is there so much being invested in this one guy? It's the thinking of the WWE. See, the guy at the top has been up there, Vince McMahon, for a long time, and he learned from his father, and they just haven't seemed to evolve and get away from, thinking, regardless of what everybody else is doing, there's always one guy in any given era that you can point to as the obvious frontrunner, as the man, and this goes back to, I was listening to the Stone Cold podcast yesterday, and he had a guest on whose name was Cowboy Johnny Mantell. And Cowboy Johnny Mantell was telling this story about, there was this wrestler who was like, let's say 6'8" or 6'10". It said he weighed about 250 pounds, and he was an incredible athlete. Like, how when Undertaker goes to the top rope, and he catwalks across the rope and does the old school, drops down and hits his opponent in the arm. This guy was as tall as the Undertaker, and he could walk around the entire ring on the top rope. He walked around the whole thing full circle. And so Cowboy Johnny Mantell says that Vince Sr. takes a look at this guy, and instead of realizing that this guy is money, by the way, his name was Don Leo Jonathan. Instead of realizing that Don Leo Jonathan was money and seeing what he could do with him, Vince Sr.'s first response was, well, I can't do anything with this guy because nobody's going to believe that Bruno can beat him. And at the time, Bruno Sammartino was the face of the WWF, right? And so Vince McMahon sees this incredible athlete, and instead of like, there could be so many dream matchups between Don Leo Jonathan and Bruno Sammartino. Instead, he thinks, this guy is so good, he's going to make my guy, the face of my company, look weak. And for those reasons, I won't hire him. I got to keep him away because I got to protect the face of the company.
Yeah, and with the whole Bruno Sammartino thing, that's where the whole face, like, obviously it was a different time, WWF, it was a different time then, but it was also the same as now, really. I mean, comparing what they're trying to do now, I mean, everyone except for John Cena has been a short-term face of the company. And, John Cena, even though I'm not the biggest fan of John Cena, even though I publicly trash John Cena for his in-ring ability, he is a great entertainer, and he has carried the company. And that's where the issue I had with Roman Reigns lies. This is where I look at Roman Reigns and compare everyone else to him. Bruno Sammartino sold out Madison Square Garden many, many times. Hulk Hogan, many arenas sold out. And that's what Shawn Michaels, great matches, memorable matches that we still talk about today. And John Cena, entertainer, obviously, but Roman Reigns, not a merchandise seller, not a person to sell out an arena alone because of his name, and they can't use the excuse that he's related to The Rock, because people are not buying that mess anymore. But the way I look at it, when I look at everything that WWE has done in the past, it's like they're stuck there, because there was a period where they had many people, and ironically, that was a period when the problems were bare minimum, which blows my mind, actually. Like, when you're able to have problems less and have everyone on the ticket, that's huge. But back to Roman Reigns, he's just, I don't even know the word for it right now, man.
Let me draw your attention to this. Okay. Remember back when Stone Cold they came to him out of nowhere and they said to him, tonight, you're going to put over Brock Lesnar. Okay. You're going to lay down. You're going to do the favors for Brock. He's going to pin you. And Stone Cold's excuse was, wait, hang on. This is just a random Monday Night Raw. Why would I lay down for Brock Lesnar on a random Monday Night Raw when we could really get real money out of this? We should start a feud and I should fight him at the pay-per-view. And they said, no. We just need you to lay down tonight. And he disagreed with it so much that he was quoted as, taking his ball and going home. So, he was the face of the company at the time. Now, the next guy in line, the second biggest guy, was The Rock. And if you remember, when Stone Cold left, that next week, they let The Rock come out on Raw and cut a promo against Stone Cold. And The Rock came out and for a shoot was saying, Stone Cold screwed up. He took his ball and went home. It was unprofessional, blah, 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 blah. So fast forward to this past Monday on Raw. What do you think about the fact that the show started out with Seth Rollins coming out and for shoot saying about Roman Reigns, you let everybody down. You made me look bad. You made this company look bad. Like, what does that say about Roman Reigns when they let Seth Rollins come out and just completely trash him on top of the fact? What are they trying to do there?
Well, to be completely honest with you, the whole thing, like, if they don't continue with it, the next week, they would just use that for the one night, to be completely honest with you. But I hope that wasn't the case. I hope they're actually building on it. Because with Stone Cold's case, I mean, my gosh, great entertainer, great wrestler, but the guy just had multiple problems with his direction, what he feels WWE is trying to do to him. And Stone Cold had this idea in his head of what he wanted to have happen, and I feel like that he finally got what he wanted, obviously, when he went against The Rock. one last time. But that's just Stone Cold being Stone Cold to me. Because he had a chip on his shoulder, it seems like, after 2001-ish, around that time, maybe 2000, maybe a little sooner than that, because that was when everything started to change in WWE and slowly transitioned to a new era. And I think around that time was when he started growing that chip on his shoulder. And of course, around that time, that was when WWE started working on some newer stars as well. But back to Roman Reigns, I hope they're actually going to be building on it. That, to be honest, because I think this is the one thing that will finally light a fire in Roman Reigns behind more than anything. Because right now, Roman's not giving us anything. And I think this may be the thing that just may give a little something that fans will say, oh my gosh, this guy, look at the emotion here. Look at this. I hope so. I hope that, I don't know. I have to wait till next week before I actually comment on that fully.
Yeah, I thought it was, you're right. They haven't been doing much with him. I mean, he had that it was a decent build to WrestleMania, and then Triple H put him over, gave him his WrestleMania moment. This guy stands tall and he holds the title over his head. And then all of a sudden, he's doing nothing. He's wrestling nobody. He shows up and he comes out for 5 minutes at a time to cut a promo about not being a good guy or bad guy, but being the guy, which, as I stated already, I think is the worst line to give. You can't even put that on a shirt. If that was on a shirt, I definitely wouldn't buy it. But when you have Seth Rollins come out and you give him the green light to just say, just however you really feel about this Roman Reigns situation, just go ahead and air it out. I think what it's saying to Roman is this: if you just hear from the higher ups, from Triple H and Vince, and your bosses, so to speak, about how disappointing your actions were, that's one thing. But when you hear from your peers, because Roman, he was sitting at home watching. He's not gonna go home and not watch the show because he wants to see are they gonna mention him, what they're gonna say. He's sitting at home on his couch. He's not Roman Reigns anymore. Now he's Joe. That's his name in real life, right? He's Joe. So Joe's sitting on the couch, no longer Roman Reigns. The shield is off, and he gets to watch his peer and his brother Seth Rollins express real disappointment in him. And if that wasn't enough, and just tell me if you've ever heard of anything like this happening. That night of Raw, his last night on Raw, before he was sent home, when the show was over, he was brought back into the locker room in front of the entire locker room, all the boys in the back, the girls, the announcers, Triple H, Vince McMahon, everybody, and he had to give, forcibly, an apology to the entire locker room. Have you ever heard of anything like that happening?
Well, for one, no, I haven't. And two, they were in the right on this, because let me tell you something. I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, that was too much. That was way too much. Why are they doing that? That's just humiliating them. No, because like I said earlier, they put time and money into this guy. They took a risk with him. And it's very rare that they actually go through with a main eventer who is getting all around bad reaction from everyone across the board, to the point where he's basically a heel. He's not even a face anymore. He's basically a heel now. At least, in the past, with past superstars who had reactions like that, it was a mixed reaction. I'm not going to mention any names right now, but it was a mixed reaction. But with Roman Reigns, it's such a sucky situation because, everyone was like, almost, I don't know what the locker room atmosphere was like, but I can only imagine that some superstars saw hope when they looked at Roman Reigns getting such a big push like that as well. They're saying, oh man, if they're pushing Roman Reigns, maybe someday that'll happen to me. Superstars that are maybe a few years younger than Roman, they're looking saying maybe this can happen to me because, Roman may not have the best merchandise sale. Roman may not, be selling out house shows like, Guy A over here. But, that gives them hope. And I feel like that with Roman doing this, it was almost like a big-time athlete. It's almost equivalent to a young, big-time athlete. And I just saw a story about this, ironically, yesterday, about a basketball player getting banned from the NBA because he did drugs recently. I don't know what kind of drugs, but he got banned for at least 2 years from the NBA for doing it.
That was AJ Mayo.
Yeah. And, he had a big contract coming his way as well. And it's gone now. It's just gone because of that simple mistake. And when I look at Roman Reigns, I see the same thing. This guy made a mistake, but unlike the NBA where, they have, that's where it comes back again. NBA has other young players that can carry it, even though they're missing that one guy. But Roman is a hard hit. WWE is a team. They're a team. It's a team effort. And if they're missing one person from that team, they're going to be a little shaky. Especially if, they have the face, who is the team captain, who is basically almost like the quarterback of WWE at this point. If they have that one person and he's gone, they're not getting very far, no matter how popular, Dean is or how popular Seth is. Because Dean Ambrose, they actually really, up to that point, before the Money in the Bank, they really crapped on him bad. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely felt like they weren't. I never expected the strap to get put on Dean Ambrose. When I looked at Dean Ambrose, I felt like he was a modern day Mick Foley. And just in Mick Foley's case, it took forever before they put the belt on him. But when they finally did it, the crowd loved it. So I thought Dean Ambrose, to me, he cut the best promo of anybody in the Shield. But his wrestling ability, he became a brawler, which I guess I'm not a big fan of. I want to see. I like the more technical wrestlers, and so just to see him kind of like just wrestling really stiff and just trying to knock people's heads off all the time is not exactly entertaining. But you're right. Roman Reigns' screw up gave Dean Ambrose the opportunity to carry the strap, and so here's what a lot of people will say. They'll say, you know what, Roman Reigns, he's only human, and people make mistakes. But what you have to understand is, when you are Roman Reigns and you're the face of the WWE, you don't get afforded the opportunity to be human. You don't get to be human because the eyes of the world are upon you. And guess what? WWE loves to be in the headlines, but not for those negative reasons. And the moment that he got suspended, every news media outlet that have never even reported on WWE, but they reported that story, right? Because everybody's like, oh, here's some controversy, and that's what sells. And that's why it's so important that you don't do bad things when it's your turn to pick up the ball and run with it. Because you look at a guy like CM Punk. I mean, how controversial is CM Punk? But in his time as WWE champion, did he ever get in trouble? Was he ever involved in a scandal?
Oh, no. CM Punk was just, he was just CM Punk at that point. I definitely think CM Punk and John Cena, even though I'm not huge on John Cena, I'm bigger on CM Punk. CM Punk was definitely trying to be their role model at one point of not using any performance-enhancing drugs or anything like that. And that was his message at one point before, stuff hit the fan with WWE. And I feel like that message that he was sending really set the tone for younger superstars, some of the younger superstars as well that were in the locker room that had a chance to talk to him too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, if we had to try to figure out just the line of thinking of Roman Reigns, because of course they never say what kind of drugs, they never say what the circumstances of the situation were. It's kind of just left up to speculation. But here's what I wonder: when I think about wrestlers who typically in the wrestling business, wrestlers they're hurting and they abuse painkillers. But it starts out as trying to stop the physical pain, but then it becomes something more emotional and mental. And I just wonder, day after day of him coming into the ring and attempting to bust his ass to find favor in the WWE universe, in the crowd there and everybody continuing to boo him. I wonder if it finally got to him. Did it get inside his head and he just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna,
Well, I don't think it necessarily got inside his head like that. I think Roman is pretty used to it, growing up in the business. But I do think that his body has taken a toll on him. I mean, even before he came to the WWE, he was a football player, so he's semi-used to the abuse, but you never get fully used to it, obviously. Even Mick Foley said you never get used to it. But I truly believe that him transitioning over to WWE, and there's a lot of superstars that transition from football to WWE, past 2 years alone. But I think that his body has taken a lot over the years. Even I even said before he came to WWE that no telling what he took, because I never actually seen him play, and football, obviously. But I'm assuming that he did. But it's just, I don't think he really cares about the reactions at this point, which is kind of good and kind of bad. Kind of good because, you look at his family over the years who've gotten certain reactions. Obviously The Rock, Rocky Maivia, die, Rocky, die. I think that set the tone, kind of like, you have to ignore those kind of reactions when it happens when you're in a certain situation. But I think the one thing more than ever that's hurting Roman is the fact that it happened in the first place. Like, so many wrestlers feel like they can do something and get away with it. And, that I actually saw an interview with Scott Hall talking about his drug testing issue, which I found very interesting, that they actually knew a week earlier about his drug issues. Like, they had him work a few more shows, and then they were like, okay, we're going to bust you now because you worked the big money shows. But
yeah,
and that's another thing. I don't know how true it is that they knew a week earlier about Roman's issues. I don't know if you heard about that.
They knew. There's no way that they don't know. They run a very tight ship over there, and of course they knew. But you know what? A decision had to be made, because they're not saying this guy's not going to get punished. But what they're saying is, at the point where they were at in the storyline, you can't just have him drop out. Things have to take place. Things have to be set up. So before we make this guy leave, we're going to make sure that we set things up so that when he comes back, he can just roll right back into that main event and do what it is that he's trying to do. So I want to go back to something real quick that you touched on, which was the die, Rocky, die chants that The Rock used to have to hear every night as he's going out there in his little Samoan get up and his hair is all wavy and it was a terrible look, right? And so the whole deal is what they learned from that situation with The Rock is that, hey, how about we don't take this guy and force people to see him as the shiny new baby face with a giant smile on his face and all this kind of stuff. How about we just give him a microphone, let him go ahead and be a heel and say what he wants to say to the crowd and be who he truly is. And Stone Cold has said this a bunch of times in the media and on his podcast and where anybody will listen. You know, I look at that kid Roman Reigns, and they gotta let him get a heel run. They gotta stop trying to force him to be a babyface. And nobody's listening to Stone Cold. And it's like, you've seen this before. How many times have you seen a guy, you tried to make him one thing when he was obviously the other? And it's the same reason why Batista left. This last time when Batista left, Vince McMahon brought him in as a babyface. And he said to Vince, I gotta be a heel. They're not gonna want to see me as a babyface. And he was correct. So what it comes down to is, you know, as you said that you're hoping that the storyline continues and stuff like that. When Roman Reigns comes back, regardless of whether or not he wins the belt back or whatever, but do you think they're finally going to let him be a heel?
Oh, I think it's so hard nowadays for heels and face. I think this is the hardest era for heels and face, obviously, because I'm one of those fans who's sitting in the stands cheering for the heel. I'm one of those fans. Like, if I see a heel, like, I used to go to shows when they would come around here, and I remember cheering for Umaga, who was a big heel at the time.
Yes, he was.
You know, I was cheering for Umaga. He had a match for Shawn Michaels. I was not cheering for Shawn Michaels. I was cheering for Umaga instead. And same for the other show. I was cheering for Cody Rhodes instead of Crime Time. But it's such a hard thing because everyone likes the bad guy now. It's cool to like the bad guy. It's not like, you know, there's a lot of factors that came into it because I do think Cena kind of pushed the issue with fans liking the bad guy more. I call it the Cena syndrome, where the good guy can just not win with the crowd. And that's going to keep happening, you know, regardless. I think Roman's trying to sneak some heel antics in, actually, because, you know, he's showing signs of flashing out at the crowd, you know, sit down, sip your beer, and everything like that, you know.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, all right, this is going somewhere because, you know, they boo him, and he never says anything back. But on that night, that last night that he was at Raw, he was like, yeah, all the guys in the crowd, how about you just take a seat and sip your beer? Like, shut up, you know? And I thought, this is it. They're gonna let this guy. This is the moment I've been waiting for. Let him tell the crowd. You know, Jericho goes out there every night and tells the crowd, "You're idiots. I don't care what you think. Sip it in, man." The gift of Jericho, right? Let Roman Reigns talk back to these guys. He's getting booed out of, you know. Because let me tell you something. That would be an amazing feeling. He's gonna talk some trash to the crowd, and the crowd is gonna go nuts because they're gonna boo him more. But in the WWE universe, being booed is only a bad thing if you fight it. If you embrace it and do everything you can to get more of that reaction, all of a sudden you're gold, man.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, looking at Roman, he seemed comfortable when he was yelling at the crowd. That's my thing. He looked very comfortable. He was not, you know, being, oh, I'm not a bad guy. I'm not a good guy. I'm the guy. No, he switched and he was like, how about you just sit there and shut your mouth straight up? That's the Roman I want to see more of because, you know, the fans are like, yay, we're losers. You know, The Rock, you saw The Rock. The Rock began insulting the crowd. How about you shut your mouth, you bunch of losers?
Yeah.
And, yay, we're losers. Yay, he's good.
Yeah, they tried to. This isn't sing along with the champ, jabroni.
This isn't sing along with the champ. He lost that privilege. The Rock sings it by himself. And, you know, it's something about that kind of abuse that gets us WWE fans going. I don't know if we like being abused by the wrestlers verbally or what, but if I can just tell you a little funny story right now, I think this will kind of clear up, and, you know, you probably be like, okay, WWE fans just love abuse. Back when Vladimir Kozlov was wrestling,
Right.
they actually gave him some promo time, and we were chanting USA, 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 and all that, and Kozlov actually pointed out, I was sitting in the fourth row, and, I was waving my arms like an idiot. Obviously a 6 foot tall man waving his arms around like an idiot. USA, USA. All of a sudden, Kozlov looks at me dead in the eyes. I don't know what he said, but someone said he insulted you bad, dude. and I started cheering for this guy. I was like, yeah, he insulted me. And I'm like, wait a minute, he insulted me.
Yeah.
What am I cheering for?
Then it
And
hits
he did
you.
the same thing. He did the same thing to a few other guys on the other side of the row, and they started cheering for him. I truly believe WWE fans. It's not as much as liking the abuse. We like to be acknowledged. We don't like to see a promo and they're acting like they're in the back room by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that.
Like if you're just standing in the ring and if you're trying so hard to ignore them and you're just trying to act like no one's in the room. They'll pay no attention to these people behind the barricades, type of thing. Everyone knows who does that and who on the main roster does that already. So I'm not even gonna go down that route. But
If you look at a guy like you just made me think of Daniel Bryan. When he was a heel, and he's screaming no and the crowd screaming yes, to the point to where look at how much he embraced being a heel. He would pick, every week he picks a guy, right? As he walks down the ramp and right as he gets ringside, every week he picks one fan and gets completely in their face and goes back and forth with just that one fan. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And you know what? The people are like, we love it. We're driving him nuts. He's driving them nuts. And then all of a sudden you look up and he has this completely organic connection with the crowd. It wouldn't have mattered if he was heel, babyface, or anything in between. They loved him. And if he came back today, he would be the man.
Yeah. And the whole Daniel Bryan thing, everyone was like, this guy can't, talk on the mic that well. But I feel like he proved them wrong.
Yeah, I just think when he was on the mic, he was just he had a very calm demeanor about him. And he never really was angry. Everything was kind of like very lighthearted. He laughed a lot. There was nothing intense about his mic work. But when he got into that ring, you knew he meant business, man.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, coming up here, bro. We're winding down here. We got about 2 minutes left in the show. I just want to get your final thoughts here on this Roman Reigns situation. Where do you think it is that we go from here? Because we got Battleground coming up, and we got SummerSlam coming up after that. What's gonna happen with Roman Reigns and his brethren from the Shield?
Well, from past experience, I feel like Roman Reigns will keep his spot because they need him at this point. They need him, but they don't need just Roman Reigns. They need him to be the real Roman Reigns that we got a taste of last time. I think Roman Reigns needs to usher in the, almost breaking down a barrier of being heel and face, almost. It's shook to his foundation right now. I feel like he can really change the game if he really puts a lot of focus into it, if he finds that fire from this experience. I feel like he'll be just fine if he does that.
All right, man. Well, I definitely appreciate you being on the show today, JJ. Your opinions are amazing and invaluable, and I think that you've brought a lot to the table and hopefully given the listeners of this show a lot to think about going forward.
All right. I woke up late, so this is my early morning interview right here, man.
Yeah, well, you were on that New York time. I was like, oh my goodness, but we definitely got it all worked out and got you on here, and we look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you so much for your time, JJ.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. So it was definitely good to have JJ a part of the show this morning and get a different opinion in. hit me up, guys. Let me know what you think about this situation with Roman Reigns. Should he still be the face of the company? Does it matter that he got caught violating the WWE wellness policy? And what do you think is going to happen going forward with him? I can always be reached on the FTW group or via email at FTW, the number 3, the word 6, and the number 5 at gmail.com. Again, that's FTW365 at gmail.com. I'm going to get on down the road and try to enjoy my 4th of July weekend, and I suggest you guys do the same, all right? Stay safe out there. And thank you so much for listening to the FTW podcast. Take care, guys.